I'll never forget when that helicopter crashed on the Twilight Zone movie.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
That was the first time it put in my, oh, people die when people do stupid shit.
I don't quite know how to get into this subject, but what's being called the Twilight Zone trial, as we are sitting here now, is taking place. And this is a case where 3 people were killed in the making of a film.
It was one of the most horrifying accidents in Hollywood history. An actor decapitated, 2 children crushed, and a film set turned into a crime scene. But what if one of the biggest names in the industry, Steven Spielberg, knew more than he ever let on, and used his power to bury the truth? In the summer of 1982, what should have been just another night shoot for a Hollywood blockbuster turned into a real-life nightmare. A helicopter came crashing down on the set of Twilight Zone the movie, killing legendary actor Vic Morrow and 2 children in the most gruesome way imaginable, right in front of the cameras. The footage was so disturbing, it was locked away. The media swarmed, lawsuits piled up, and blame flew in every direction. But there was one name that kept surfacing in whispers: Steven Spielberg. He wasn't directing the scene. He wasn't even on set. But according to insiders, Spielberg's fingerprints were all over the production, and his silence after the tragedy spoke volumes. Rumors began to swirl, claims that people were warned not to speak out, that careers were quietly threatened, and that Spielberg, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, may have played a larger role than anyone dared to admit. So how did a man who helped create movie magic become linked to one of the industry's darkest moments? And more importantly, did Spielberg help cover it up to protect his empire?
A helicopter crash near Magic Mountain today brought tragedy to the set of the Steven Spielberg movie, The Twilight Zone.
It was supposed to be the final scene of the night, just a quick pickup shot before wrap. But at around 2:30 a.m. on July 23, 1982, chaos erupted on the set of Twilight Zone, the movie. Actor Vic Morrow was carrying 2 children through a shallow river, with a low-flying helicopter above and pyrotechnics going off around them. What happened next would leave the entire industry shaken. Suddenly, a massive fireball exploded too close to the chopper. Disoriented and flying dangerously low, the pilot lost control. In seconds, the helicopter's rotor clipped Morrow, decapitating him on impact. The same blade struck 7-year-old Micah Din Lei and 6-year-old Renee Shin Yi Chen, killing both instantly. Crew members screamed, cameras kept rolling. Some tried to help, others just froze. The entire scene played out like a nightmare, and it was all captured on film. That footage would never see the light of day, locked away almost immediately. But the damage had been done. Within hours, media trucks surrounded the lot. Headlines screamed tragedy, and what was meant to be a nostalgic tribute to Rod Serling's Twilight Zone had turned into one of the darkest moments in Hollywood history. But when the dust settled, the finger-pointing began, and things got ugly fast. In the aftermath, investigators quickly zeroed in on director John Landis, who had been calling the shots during the doomed sequence. He was charged with involuntary manslaughter, along with 4 other crew members, including the helicopter pilot and unit production manager. The charges were historic. For the first time, a Hollywood director was being held criminally responsible for deaths on set. It soon came to light that the shoot had violated multiple safety regulations. The child actors had been hired illegally, no work permits, no special clearance, and they were working after midnight, which was flat out illegal in California. On top of that, the explosives had been set too close to the aircraft. It wasn't just negligence, it looked like outright recklessness. Landis, for his part, denied all responsibility. He showed little public remorse and even cracked jokes during the trial, which only fueled the outrage. But through it all, there was one name you didn't see in court. One name that, despite being one of the film's top producers, was barely mentioned in the legal storm, and that was Steven Spielberg. Spielberg had co-produced Twilight Zone, the movie, and directed one of its segments. But when the accident happened, he wasn't on set. As soon as the news broke, he cut ties with John Landis entirely. The two had been friends and collaborators. Landis even directed the prologue for Spielberg's segment, but Spielberg never worked with him again. What followed was a wall of silence. No press conference, no public statement, no tribute to the victims. Spielberg walked away from the film and, for the most part, the controversy. Insiders say he never spoke about it again. That silence was deafening. Some in the industry saw it as self-preservation, Spielberg protecting his image as a visionary, family-friendly director. Others saw it as something colder, strategic, calculated, the kind of move only someone with serious power could get away with. But behind the scenes, whispers started spreading. In Hollywood, silence usually comes with a price or a warning. As the trial gained media attention, a strange pattern emerged. Crew members who were outspoken early on suddenly stopped talking. Some pulled out of interviews. Others refused to testify, citing vague professional concerns. And more than a few started whispering about quiet threats coming from behind closed doors. According to multiple industry insiders, some speaking anonymously, Spielberg's legal team wasn't just managing fallout. They were allegedly reaching out to crew members, applying pressure to keep Spielberg's name out of the courtroom. One former production assistant claimed that people were told, in no uncertain terms, that going on record about Spielberg's involvement could kill your career before it starts. And sure enough, several would-be whistleblowers suddenly found themselves without work. Promising careers in cinematography, stunt coordination, even casting, just vanished. It wasn't proof of anything, but it raised an uncomfortable question. Was Spielberg not just avoiding the fallout, but actively suppressing it? And then came the most chilling accusation of all. Whispers turned into allegations. A former crew member, whose identity was never officially revealed, claimed that at least one potential witness was personally warned that dragging Spielberg into the trial would be career-ending. The same source alleged that Spielberg's team worked behind the scenes to ensure certain depositions never reached the courtroom. Court records showed that Spielberg was never subpoenaed, not once. Despite being the film's executive producer and one of the most powerful people involved in the project, he was allowed to stay completely out of the legal spotlight. No testimony, no cross-examination, nothing. Some argued that Spielberg wasn't legally responsible. He wasn't on set. He didn't plan the helicopter stunt. He didn't break labor laws. All true. But that didn't explain why so many people close to the production described the same eerie pattern. Conversations that stopped abruptly, documents that disappeared, and a legal system that seemed strangely uninterested in looking upward. But even without legal consequences, the tragedy left a permanent mark on him. In the years following the tragedy, Spielberg's career took a noticeable turn. His next major films, E.T., Indiana Jones, and The Temple of Doom, The Color Purple, all leaned toward safer territory, far from the dark, eerie tone of Twilight Zone. Publicly, he presented himself as the wholesome storyteller, someone who brought wonder to the screen, not horror behind it. But insiders saw something else. Spielberg reportedly refused to speak about the incident, even in private. Crew members who had worked on Twilight Zone were quietly distanced from his future productions. And his partnership with John Landis? It was dead on arrival. Despite years of friendship, Spielberg never collaborated with him again, not even a mention in interviews. Some say it was guilt, others say it was optics. In an industry where image is everything, Spielberg knew how to pivot. And he did, flawlessly. His reputation rebounded. The tragedy faded from headlines. And the man behind the curtain remained untouchable. Still, the truth about what happened that night remains murky. The Twilight Zone accident shook Hollywood to its core. It exposed just how dangerous a film set could be when budgets, egos, and deadlines override basic safety. In response, studios began enforcing tighter rules, especially around child actors and pyrotechnics. Permits became stricter. On-set safety coordinators gained real authority. No one wanted to see another incident like it. But while procedures changed, the hierarchy didn't. Directors, producers, and studio heads, especially the ones with blockbuster power, still operated above the line. When accidents happened, blame usually fell on someone lower. Spielberg wasn't the first to avoid accountability in a tragedy, and he wouldn't be the last. His power only grew. Over the decades, he became one of the most influential figures in Hollywood history. And for many, that influence raises an uncomfortable reality. In this business, the bigger your name, the easier it is to disappear from the fallout. And for those still haunted by the memory of Twilight Zone, that truth is harder to ignore than ever. More than 4 decades have passed since that night on the Twilight Zone set, but the scars never really healed. 3 lives were lost, violently, needlessly. And yet, no one ever went to prison. John Landis walked free. The studio paid settlements. And Steven Spielberg? He kept making movies. Bigger ones, safer ones, ones that helped people forget. But some haven't forgotten. Some still wonder how a man with so much power walked away without ever answering a single question under oath. They wonder how testimonies vanished, how careers suddenly stalled, and how a tragedy that should have shaken the entire foundation of Hollywood ended up as just another footnote in film history. Spielberg built an empire on storytelling, on wonder, emotion, and spectacle. But behind one of his earliest passion projects lies a story that was never fully told. A story about power, silence, and the price of staying untouchable. 3 people died that night. 2 of them were children. And the one man who might have had the power to change the outcome has never had to answer for any of it. So the question remains, was Spielberg truly innocent? Or just too powerful to blame?